Well, now a very unusual situation where we're running ahead of schedule. And I happen to know that Erwin actually has to jet across town after his presentation, so maybe it would be helpful, Erwin, if you wanted to go a little bit early. So before you come up here, or as you're coming up here, when I was first talking to Erwin about his presentation, he referred to innovation as a knife fight. And like we've talked about at some of our other presentations today, there are a lot of like realities and difficulties and challenges with this job. And Erwin's going to demonstrate not only like how to think about and how to respond to some of those things, but also his innovative thinking in terms of how he's going to use his time today, because he's one of the ones who wants to open the discussion back up to the crowd as well. So come on up, Erwin. Herman didn't have a picture of himself in costume, so I just thought I would put up a picture of Herman Munster, which he said was the best costume he ever wore. Your mom made it for you, right?
She did.
And he won a prize for it, actually, so it's a shame we don't have it. Take it away.
Do we have a clicker? Yeah. Well, hello, everybody. My name's Erwin, and I am a recovering innovation addict. If you go by the definition of the word addiction, right, it's any brain stimuli, right, that produces a good feeling for something that's going to have a harmful effect afterwards or harmful consequences. So let's get real about the Enterprise Innovation Challenge. Let me give you a little bit about my addiction first. So I think I had my first hit in 1997 when I started as a defense analyst, started studying innovation in the interwar period between World War I and World War II, doing some analysis for the Department of Defense, seeing how it is that with the advent of motorization, radio, air power, militaries had to innovate and change their whole military structures to fight in a new, different way. So that got me hooked. Several years later went on after I did some time in the Army, and I went to work for a small consultancy called PRTM, where I did innovation consulting for them, and then we got bought out by PwC. I started getting even more hooked there when I was given the opportunity to lead their innovation analytics incubator. Fast forward a little bit, decided to go on my own, try a new type of innovation drug, decided to do my own thing, a startup. A lot of consequences there. Trying to help veterans run into the tech sector. Had my lessons learned, but not enough. So what I do, I went to a really large enterprise, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, where I served as chief innovation strategist for their innovation office, and then I helped stand up their innovation and ventures office, which I think was the first of its kind in the intelligence community. And after that, so I was getting ready to make a move from there, and I don't know if you guys know Eric Ries. I was sitting down with him, having a conversation. He asked me, where are you going after this? And I said, I'm going to Freddie Mac. And he's like, what are you, a masochist? And that's where I'm at right now. I'm a director in their innovation lab, helping with their affordable portfolio and drive innovation there. So when I interviewed for Freddie Mac, my boss at the time, I told her I love solving big problems. And she said, well, at NGA, if you're helping to keep the nation secure, there's a terrorist attack somewhere, it's localized. At Freddie Mac, something wrong happens, that affects the entire economy. Right? Because Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae probably control about 15% of the US economy. So it's a big problem. Big structural changes, big opportunity for innovation, right? I was hooked even more. Call me crazy. So every single time I go into innovation, it's like, wow, I have the coolest job in a company. Like, innovation is like so sexy, right? All excited. All excited to go do it. I'm going to go conquer the world. I have my plan. I know how I'm going to drive change. I'm going to transform the entire industry, right? But then reality sets in, right? It's the morning after, not feeling well at all, right? This is really what it takes, right? There's going to be a lot of valleys. There's going to be procurement. There's going to be contracting. There's going to be consultants. We'll talk a little bit about that. There's going to be marketing, there's going to be sales, right? There's going to be culture, there's going to be all these different impediments, right? And I've been to many innovation conferences, and as I've been sitting there, I love the earlier presentation. Was it Greta? Henrietta, right? You said, like, I must not be doing it right because everybody seems to be getting it right. And I've been feeling like that for a long time because after all these different stints, like, man, everybody gets up there. It's like they have it right. It doesn't feel that way when I'm going through it. You know, I still don't have my big hit. So it's just so uncool. After several months, the coolness just is gone. You're like, why am I doing it every single day, right? You go in there, you have that meeting with executives, you think you have executive buy-in, right? Everybody's content. Marketing sales says, yes, the head of procurement, they're gonna work with you, right? Even the external consultants out there, you're saying all the right things, right? But then this is what really happens. Not everyone's truly bought in. So it's a knife fight, a fist fight. You know, something's going on behind the scenes that makes it very, very difficult and challenging. You are having to navigate that innovation jungle. As I mentioned, you have all those internal stakeholders. You have all these startups knocking on your door, personal relationships with people, other executives. You should talk to these people. Why don't we do these folks? I put in there the HIPPO, the highest paid person's opinion in a room, that their idea, right, is going to work and change the industry as well. What should you use? Should you use design thinking, lean startup, jobs to be done? What's the right methodology to be using, right? Should I be doing open innovation, external crowdsourcing, internal crowdsourcing, hackathon, challenges? Or you always get that, I want to do something with AI or blockchain. Why aren't we doing AI or blockchain? Right? You get the incubators, right? And the multiple consultants. They don't want to tell you how to do your job and do it better than you can, right? I've been a consultant, right? They're only one step ahead, right? So with enough reading, you're equally at pace with them. So something else about me is that I'm an Army reservist. I was an infantry guy, went to Ranger School, and this is, when you walk into Ranger School, that's what you see. It's not for the weak of heart or faint-hearted. And I think it's the same for innovation. It's not for the weak or faint-hearted. It takes a lot of stamina, it takes a lot of perseverance, and it's a grueling day-to-day job that you have to be able to look at the ultimate goal and division to persevere. So what does it take? As I said, perseverance, takes grit, takes vision, partnership, for sure, people skills, patience, humility, some passion, humor, and a bit of crazy. You got to be a little bit crazy. It's okay to be the crazy one. And I tell you, because you got to go crazy, it's easier to back off from crazy than move forward from no, you can't do it. So it's okay to be the crazy one, but you need all those things surrounding it for you to be able to take those crazy ideas. Really, you know, one step shy of crazy is outstanding and extraordinary. To be able to get to that outstanding or extraordinary mark, right, you definitely have to partner with people. You have to be able to have those people skills, understand the room, navigate the stakeholders, navigate the enterprise, know who's going to be your ally, who's not going to be your ally, know who's an influencer. You have to be able to have that patience, humility to learn. Boy, have I taken my fall in innovation hubris, having that I got it all figured out. Humility is key, because you're going to fail. You're going to fail multiple times, especially inside the enterprise. You really have to think about yourself as an internal startup. It's no different than being outside, just because you might get a budget, if you're lucky enough to get a budget. Some of us don't even have a budget, just go do. It's someone's great idea, go set up an innovation lab. Why? Because that other company has an innovation lab. So that's why they want to set one up. They want a shiny new object. But you have to be able to take that mindset of being an entrepreneur, and if you're familiar with the lean startup method, right, it is to understand what is the problem or opportunity you're solving with whatever innovation project, program, lab you're doing, right? And start small. Right? I've been a victim of wanting the Cadillac plan, wanting everything at once. What's the first thing you're going to do? Are you going to try to motivate your internal entrepreneurs, right, and do some internal crowdsourcing? Are you going to set up a small ventures group? Are you going to be able to tackle the culture piece? What is it? But try to start with one thing at a time. And what problem are you solving with that? For whom? What are your biggest assumptions? That with this one small product, one small innovation offering you're going to give your enterprise, what would cause it to fail? And start testing those assumptions. Start validating. Understand who are the users and consumers of your innovation product, and then set up your experiment. Right? Set up your experiment, see what works, be ready to fail, be ready to learn, set up what your outcomes are, and then make a decision. Or help your bosses make it, have your bosses make a decision. And like most entrepreneurs, expect failures and learnings. So I'm going through these slides because I want this to be a discussion, but I'm trying to set it up. Let me give you a historical example of how difficult it is. And sometimes this job, being in the head of the innovation program, project, whatnot, right? It's not always all glory. The glory might come later on. Anybody here ever heard of Billy Mitchell? Right? So, this man is the reason why we have an Air Force today. It's probably one of the reasons why we're not speaking German today. He started in World War I. He had the vision of what aircraft's air power could do to the battlefield. World War I, everybody thought, it's great just to be able to do reconnaissance and intelligence over the battlefield. He thought, no. As the range and capacity to carry different types of weight of aircraft increased, he saw they could actually be used for attack, for raids. So in the 1920s, as they started experimenting with aircraft carriers and different ways of using air power, there are a lot of folks who were naysayers within the Army, because there wasn't an Air Force then, and the Navy. They didn't think aircrafts could sink a ship. So what did he do? He didn't care, because he was a bit crazy. And he took at this time he was already a general officer, he took an old Navy old German battleship, put it off the coast of Panama, and he sunk it. With munitions coming off of Bi-wing airplanes, those old World War I airplanes, he proved that he could sink it. He just needed to prove that. Could sink a stationary battleship, right? Folks didn't like that. He got censored for doing that because he disobeyed. But he needed to prove that that was the threat that we were facing. So his next experiment after that was, okay, could we have the range? Could they potentially raid? So he raided the Panama Canal with aircrafts, and showing that there wasn't any anti-aircraft guns or anything prepared for this new threat that was coming and looming. Then in 1932, right from that, he raided New York as well. He raided New York to show that how aircraft could penetrate New York City and threaten the U.S. homeland. From that, his superiors got so pissed off, they banished him to Pearl Harbor. So what did he do in 1932? He raided Pearl Harbor. Sound familiar? So he had division, but he pushed, and he slowly gained allies. He wasn't always liked. You know, one of his allies was Admiral Muffet, who was a big proponent of aircraft carriers, and that's why we had several aircraft carriers already by the time the Japanese invaded Pearl Harbor. And then we proved the advent of air power at sea with the Battle of Midway. I actually called the Battle of Midway an MVP, because at the first time in the marketplace of the battlefield that you showed that there was product market fit in terms of two navies colliding over air power, and proved that it changed the nature of warfare at sea, and battleships became obsolete. But what happened to Billy Mitchell? Did he get promoted? Anybody know? Yep, he was court-martialed. He did not see, his glory did not come during his time, but because of his passion, of his perseverance, we were able to have an Air Force. And sometimes you might not get that glory right away when you're doing innovation. Sometimes you put so much pressure on the enterprise as you're going through those peaks and valleys, right, that it's forcing change, and you might not even see it. You might even be pushed out with that. But I'll tell you that it's worth it. One book recommendation, I'm going to put this aside, is anybody read this book, Rebels at Work, by Carmen Medina? Carmen Medina was a CIA officer who was responsible for putting together sort of the intelligence community's knowledge-sharing network. And Rebels at Work really talks about how she went about it over 5-6 years time frame period to go about and develop the stakeholder buy-in, understand the enterprise, understand what to do and what not to do, understand who are the folks who are going to help you at the enterprise, understand what the mentality you should have as you're navigating through innovation. Because the key thing, right, is you want to be able to achieve those results. You got the small results, but you also want to be able to drive the overall enterprise to future survival in many ways. Especially because right now, you see there's no industry that isn't being disrupted. There's a high rate of technological change, so we have to be able to become very adept at our skill set to navigate all those peaks and valleys, navigate those bureaucracies, navigate all those challenges. So highly recommend picking up that book. So, before I start the discussion, I say take heart. Another great innovator from World War II, right, who was a lone wolf for a long time, Winston Churchill, never give in, never give in, never, never, in nothing great or small, large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense, never yield to force, never yield to apparently overwhelming might of the enemy. Never give in. You're going to have to persevere. You're going to have that vision of what you're trying to do, but you can do it smartly. And understand, it's okay if you fail. It's okay if you don't get a great review coming out of the innovation. You have done something good by pushing the enterprise to think differently. So, it's not all glory, it's not all super shiny and sexy. I want to understand from you guys, what are some of the challenges you're facing, right? Beyond the successes, what are some of the big obstacles? What are some of the royal rumbles that you're facing? Back there, good captain.
I just want to say you stole like my entire brief. My challenge is I don't have to miss the story.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. That was really good. Well done.
Oh, what are some of the challenges you had? Yeah.
One of the things we're looking at is we have over 600,000 people in the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we doing to activate them and how do we track them? People are coming up with ideas, how do we track them? What are they doing that so that we can connect together? And how do we follow up on that after the ideation?
Let me ask you, sir, bureaucratically in your organization, what challenges are you facing to be able to address the problem?
I believe that what is going to be problem or his challenge is going to be that the leaders are going to see a bright and shiny answer to what the immediate problem is, with no concept of what the next 2 or 3 contexts might be rolling in. And so therefore, thinks that that's a great answer, instead of realizing that all great answers are never dominant. They're only good for a certain time. And so therefore, it needs to be generating 4 or 5 answers so that you can switch. When Boris and Natasha say, it's time to go to alternate family.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, right? You're always going to be in prototype stage nowadays. And you have to continue to iterate. Sometimes those executives want the big win right away. And once they have the win, they're done with you. And they move on.
I think we have buy-in from staff level, buy-in from the top level, but it's all the people in the middle that have to get the work done that I think are very skeptical about innovation because it's unclear to them how they use what we're doing to get their job done every day. And so it's selling that middle part.
That's the permafrost, or the white stuffing inside of the Oreo cookie.
That's exactly right.
That's right. And that is tough. Actually, that's where the Royal Rumble usually happens, with that group right there. Because you get senior executive buy-in. You get even their bosses would say to do it. But especially for organizations, really large enterprises where people aren't going to be moved, they'll just wait you out. They will, and that's just a reality that you have to contend with. Let's see. Okay, let me ask, go ahead.
Suggest, like, what I hear a lot is that folks say they're struggling because the motivational piece is not quite like fitting. Maybe there's like misaligned KPIs or misaligned expectations. So people are motivated on one thing, but then they're kind of being asked to do something else, which is also valuable, but the pieces aren't aligned.
Yeah.
So like motivational hurdles, I hear a lot in terms of getting the crowd activated.
Yeah, or at very least aligning them to understand what are the enterprise goals. Get that alignment so that when people are innovating, they know they're innovating on something that matters to the enterprise, matters to those executives, right? So they're not wasting on energy on stuff that really is not going to get done because it's not the direction that the company wants to go. It's not ready to go in that direction.
I see it at a couple different levels. Obviously on the leadership side, it's about trying to get buy-in and allocation of budget and resources. And then the time that you put in. At the mid-level, I see teams competing with other teams. And often throw roadblocks up and going to great lengths to impede somebody from leading innovation because they have a title on their department that says, we're supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Right? And then on the personal level, I see a lot of people's intimidation with sharing their creativity, right? Like trying to get somebody to sketch something and then show it to somebody else is kind of a big deal, right? Because education is built to kind of beat the creativity out of us, compliance, and be good at our jobs over time. So I find that even if I get buy-in in a program, I still need to get those people to stand up and say, I have an idea, or click the button that says, I have an idea, because that idea is going to go in front of everybody, and now there's that fear of judgment. Is it a good idea?
Yeah.
You know? So those are the challenges.
No, and the first one you mentioned, right? I mean, that is so true. Every organization I've been in, there's another innovation shop, another competing group saying, no, that's my job. And sometimes they'll collaborate with you, but sometimes they won't. Just for the record, I don't have any answers. This is our therapy session, right? But these are just the realities we have to deal with.
I would just also piggyback. I like everything that's been said, but those last 2 points in the sense of the mixed messaging. You know, on the one hand, the authenticity of management saying we really do want to hear what you have to say, and that being genuine. But then at the same time, you're trying to make them feel liberated, and it's the start. You know, share your wildest ideas and your sort of dream shot, your moonshot stuff. But also, did you ask your manager?
Yeah.
Right? And those two things just don't work together, depending on the person's manager as well.
Yeah.
Some managers are very supportive. Other managers are a little more, as you said, waiting and
Yeah.
see, right? Let's see if it works first. Right?
And some managers are kind of supported, right? Depending on who's saying. Like I've had that situation where, you know, the director of the organization that I'm leading says we're going to do this. So I talk to the manager and I'm like, yeah, we're going to support this person working on this idea. But then slowly found out for that individual that he's not being given the time. But every time I go to talk to him, they're all smiles, we're supporting, right? But I think one leading practice that I've seen worked, I saw it worked at PwC, and I saw it work at a sister agency when I was in the government, was the fact that to get a get-to-yes meeting with the senior officer, whether that's VP, that's that director of that department, you know, that get-to-yes meeting is going in there, these are roadblocks I'm facing, how are you, who assigned me to do this job, going to clear those roadblocks for me? And the other thing is, I think it was mentioned before, being able to put it on those senior executives and next level down individuals, reviews and evaluations. So they're all being evaluated on that. Now they're motivated to actually do and execute. Because if their bonus, their performance is tied to that, then they're going to be motivated to do it. Let me ask this question. So, because we're in the insourcing and getting ideas from folks, right, and getting people to work on these things, you know, I always hear, you know, I've heard Intuit, 100 startups in 100 days doing these things. You hear Google 10%. But I still find it to be the golden grail, right, that I still haven't found on how it is that we actually allow people to work on these ideas and give them the time beyond 110% they're already equipped. So let me ask, has anybody really cracked that nut in which you actually have individuals dedicated and working on that, on those ideas?
I approached it with their senior leadership, and I the head nodding, right?
Yeah.
The way we tried to approach it in the near term is I started running an innovation
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's true, right? And it's a real problem because the manager, those individuals, they have goals, they have targets they need to meet. You're taking resources away from them, and everybody else has to carry the burden if those aren't being met. So how do we solve for that, right? I've had different ideas, haven't been able to execute on them yet, to be honest, right? One would be that you give that management team a monetary reward for allowing that individual, right? So you're giving the whole team the reward, not just the individual that has the idea and goes off to the incubator and work, right? You give those individuals high visibility with those senior executives that are sponsoring you. It's my hypothesis that that could work. I haven't been really given the opportunity to work on it yet, though.
I think a good analogy here as well is with the autism. You have, it takes three people to paint a painting, right? One to mix the colors, one to paint the painting, and one to tell them to stop.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important part of innovation because you can go past the sweet spot as well, right?
Yeah.
Kind of kick a dead horse. And I think that's really important of when management's looking at testing and saying, where's the fluff, where's the real, where's the goal?
Yeah, yeah, and that's very good. I think part of it when you're coming up with an idea, actually, I'll be honest, I don't like the word idea. I really like to focus on problems because ideas are a dime a dozen, right? Are you really solving a problem, and then do you have an idea, a solution, a hypothesis on how you're going to solve that problem, right? But what is the opportunity space, right? And then how do you set your metrics around that opportunity space? I think, right, X amount of users have this problem that I'm trying to solve. So therefore, I can quantify, and I start setting up my metrics around that just to piggyback on the previous discussion in terms of how it is. That way I know where is it that I'm going to, how far do I need to go? And if I'm not hitting those, you start killing it if that doesn't prove to be true.
What about like a detailee model, where you can like just kind of rotate out of your home group or department for a period of time, work on that, and then rotate back in and bring your learnings back to that group? I mean, it might not be practical for every organization in the room, but in some cases, what do you think about? Let me just answer your question.
I would say you still have the same problem while that person is away.
Yeah.
How do you solve for that, right? And one thing that I thought about is, okay, well, if I'm the innovation shop, right, and I have a budget, maybe I use my budget to bring in consultants to fill in the gap, right? That's one potential to do, but it's that gap that I still, how do you solve that for that resource constraint that those individuals are? Like I said, it's difficult.
A couple of things work. One, as people leverage their training programs, they get time off for training, so it's
Yep.
an action learning model. So part of your action learning is to actually drive a project all the way through.
Yeah.
And then also clients who really step up for entrepreneurial activity, and you send the leaders of the business to conferences in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Because eventually they see the projects, okay, it's $100 million business.
Yeah.
But also the educational experience.
Yeah.
So they look at it, organizations are also balancing ideas with people.
Yeah. It's both.
So they see it as an investment versus not just as a drain on resources, but direct backfill is often.
But actually, that's what I like about that, having if you have it part of your overall organization's development program, right? In which individuals in a certain skill set or in a certain area have to go through this, and that's just established, right? Because HR can be very strong that way, and that can be a very powerful ally. If, when there's training, everybody has to do training, right? Everybody's got to do compliance training, right? Everybody's got to do certain training. So those are some things. But I think we're ready to. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, what time is it? 'Cause I really do have to go run to do some. Okay.
Yeah.
Run enough to do some ethnographic interviews after this, so
Oh, cool.
it never stops.
I'll give you number one is
Wait. I just want to make sure everyone can hear it. That's all.
For one organization that I worked for, we actually leveraged a summer intern program and took 10% of their time and created innovation sprints with them.
Okay.
And it was both really valuable to their experience and also a great test of
actually a really good scouting opportunity too to see what these people were capable of doing during the internship program besides, filling out spreadsheets and the regular stuff. So that was really good. And then I just want to say that I've worked with a public education environment, a public school district for almost 10 years now. And I don't think there's an environment that's any more constrained and limited for like funding, time, energy, you name it. They have every constraint, and pound for pound, they do more with their innovation program than I've ever seen. So I think if they can handle it, then the rest of you guys can figure it out too. Yeah. And they have one FTE that supports the program as a dedicated resource, and then they do pull aside some extra funding and can actually fund people's time. But what their key to success is that their cycles of testing are constrained. So they think, what is like, you think of MVP, minimal viable product, they think of like a minimal viable prototype. So don't take in capital letters, take in lowercase. The tightest, most limited cycles of learning, and they do more with that effort than anybody else that I've seen.
Yep. Need, right? Need is such a powerful motivator. And it's the reason why amongst the military services, the Marine Corps is the most innovative one. They tend to have the smallest budget. I remember my last boss at NGA saying he's like, what? You want X many million of dollars? And he was a former entrepreneur. I'll give you $100,000. If you give me $100,000, I can do more than what you're thinking you're going to do with 5 to 10 million that you're asking for. Let's see, let me switch it. What other therapeutic problems are folks facing here? I mean, this is the space, seriously, we come to these places and we talk about, what it is that we're doing, but this is the place where we should be able to bring the problems that we are facing as innovation shops to be able to work them collectively. So it's just, what are some other challenges, frustrations?
I was actually going to call somebody else out in the room, I figured. So my wonderful, helpful colleague from JPL, Laura Fisher, I don't know where she is right now, back there. So one of the things that she came and spoke recently at the NRC for my workshop, which was awesome. But one of the things that I thought really resonated with me that you had was you had that big quote up there that said, how we work is as important as what we do. And that kind of like inspired me. And, in terms of getting time for people to work on innovation, I think it comes down so much to a cultural issue, which I know is like, everybody's like, yeah, we know. But, but I'm actually working.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah, I'm working with like our internal OD person to help incorporate that into our cultural model and get people invested so that it's built into like our leadership training and things like that, that we need to get people thinking that it's not enough to just do your job. You have to do it well. You have to do it like it's 2019, not like it's 1959, and sort of ingrain that innovative mindset into our culture. So we're trying. It could be a giant failure. I'll let you know. We'll see what happens.
Anybody have to deal with sales and marketing before talking to customers? You're not allowed to go talk to customers when that's where the problem resides? Who here has had to face the iron wall that's sales and marketing? Raise your hand.
Something I've seen work in the past in previous life was what we call the sales buddy program, where we basically, this was in a software company, but where we partnered engineers with people in sales and required them to have a weekly conference call. And what it did is it did two things. It created basically a connection, some degree of emotional connection between someone deep in development and someone on the front line in sales. What it also did is it began to get developers essentially advocating for certain product features based upon their importance to sales. So I saw that work. I was at Oracle at the time.
Okay.
So I saw that work really, it was something that Ellison explicitly said, let's just
Called
do
the
this.
sales buddy partner?
Yeah, it was just let's just do this. And I saw it work extremely well at Oracle for basically eliminating low priority projects and having engineers essentially become advocates for salespeople. And I'm trying to institute a similar sort of thing at my new gig, but TBD.
Good one.
Any others? I mean, I can go on, but I really am time constrained in terms of but look, it's a little bit of downer, I get it, right? But there is a big upside if you continue to persevere. I'll tell you that I still don't have my big hit like an entrepreneur, right? I still don't have my unicorn enterprise innovation lab, but with each one that I've been to, I learn, and I continue to learn. So I just trust that at some point, right, I'm going to have all the cognitive learning come together, and it's going to align, right, and something great's going to happen. But right now, I'm still in the peaks and valleys, so don't get discouraged. Just keep on trucking, like the Grateful Dead would say. Keep moving forward, persevere, have that vision, and don't be afraid to be called crazy, because you are, for being in this job. Okay? Thank you.